Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Social Services and Community Select Committee. Please take the opportunity to introduce yourselves, make some opening statements, and then we'll move to questions.
Yes, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Kelly Coombs. I'm the Secretary for Women and Chief Executive of the Ministry for Women, and I'm joined by my colleague, Anna Chalmers, who's the Deputy Secretary for Engagement, Policy and Delivery, and Kylie Fletcher, who heads up our Mana Wahine Kaupapa Inquiry team. And I'm also joined by Raj Naran, who is our Chief Financial Officer.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'll just make some short opening remarks. Over the past year, the Ministry has made good progress towards improving outcomes for women and girls in employment, health and wellbeing, leadership and safety. Bringing women's voices to decision-making tables is an important part of driving positive change for women and girls. I was delighted to see that in our latest stocktake of public sector boards and committees, that women now hold 53.9% of these positions. This is the fourth consecutive year that women's representation has been at 50% or above, and also the 11th consecutive year of growth. Women now also hold 46.2% of board chair roles, a significant increase from 41.9% in 2022. This is a further sign that there are many talented leaders ready for and taking up governance and leadership roles. We need to ensure that we are supporting a strong pipeline of future leaders across both the public and private sector. Gender pay gaps continue to impact women in New Zealand, and last month we launched a gender pay gap toolkit alongside the Champions for Change. This is an important step towards further reducing the gender pay gap in New Zealand, and we've welcomed the opportunity to work with business leaders on this. We're working with NetSafe to develop an online toolkit for workplaces who are supporting women in leadership positions, particularly those who hold roles in the public eye. These resources will be designed to empower both employers and women with tools, knowledge and support needed to help women remain active online and continue participating confidently in public life. We had a fantastic opportunity as part of NB's FIFA program, their Leverage and Legacy program, to fund more than 120 initiatives run by non-government organisations through our Physical Activity and Wellbeing Fund. It was great to see so many organisations supporting women and girls to get active and boost their wellbeing. Over the past year, the Ministry has continued to support the Mana Wahine Kaupapa Inquiry through facilitating the research phase, supporting researchers to access information and engaging with Māori in the inquiry process. Our international work to protect and promote the rights of women and girls has included leading the work on New Zealand's progress report on the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action to the United Nations. This was submitted in June. We've also participated in 3 major international engagement for women's rights, the 68th Commission on the Status of Women, Apex Women in the Economy Forum, and recently in October, the CEDAW examination. We've also continued to work with NGOs through the International Women's Caucus. In the year ahead, we'll continue to focus our work across government to support women's leadership and representation, focusing on empowering women's economically and with a focus on wellbeing and health. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First question, Jim.
Thank you, and thanks, Kelly. That's good to hear the work that's continuing on in the women's space. I want to start around looking at the gender pay gap and the work that's been done there and the calculation tool that you mentioned in your opening remarks. As we all know, that's sat stubbornly, that gender pay gap, around that 8, 9, 10% mark for quite some time now. And one of the things that doesn't seem to be progressed is that mandatory pay transparency at the moment. We've had voluntary calculation tools before. What's the difference between your tool and, say, the strategic pay gap tool that is available?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And you're right that since about, I think it's 2017, the gender pay gap has been stuck at about that 8, 9, 10%, currently sitting at 8.2. So that's 0.4 down on the year prior, but still kind of within that band. I think the difference about the toolkit that we've developed is that we've done that alongside business. So what we heard was that almost there were some barriers in calculating your tool gap, decisions you needed to make along the way of what's in, what's out, who's in, who's out. So the engagement that we did with business really gave us a process to kind of get that common agreement of what is there. And also, so we kind of landed that through this engagement process. We also then sought the endorsement of both NatQ and Champions for Change for the process and the formula, if you like, that we had developed alongside business. And the other thing that we built into that was kind of an action plan approach and some prompts along the way so that organisations who can pick up this endorsed tool, they can, from the products we've developed, input information, and that will then take them directly to an action plan. So I think that's sort of some of the points of difference that we've been able to do. In the engagement, we were really cognizant of wanting to work with businesses in a whole range of sectors and industries and also size, because we know, bigger organisations, they've got different infrastructure behind them to support them than smaller ones. So one of the other specific products that we made was like a workbook that smaller organisations can pick up and use if their payroll system doesn't allow them to do some of this calculation. So we really came at it from a standpoint of what tools will really make a difference in terms of, businesses picking up and using this.
Can I ask something? So is there a push for those businesses, I guess, to then report that? How will that happen? Is that through the likes of the Pay Gap Insights Hub and the work that they do? Because I've been going through there, there's still not that many in relationship to businesses that are reporting their pay gaps that way.
Yeah.
And until, how confident would you be that businesses will take that information and report it?
Yeah.
Because it's not until we see the sunlight that we'll see that starting to come down.
So the resources, and actually also coming through from business and the engagement that we did, I think that they're also really keen to share that information. However, we know that there are other organisations who maybe haven't done this before, who maybe haven't thought about it. So they're the ones that we're really wanting to reach out to too. So our focus right now is on how we support the implementation and the embedding and the take-up of the toolkit. And what we then want to do is, again, work with business to go into those next steps. But in the material we've provided, we have really encouraged them to put it on their website, put the gender pay gap on the website, and also set out the context and also the actions that they're going to take. So you can kind of provide a more full picture that they, it might be also that they do want to share their pay gap information with the different registries that are out there currently. But we're thinking about this phase really focusing on the embedding and the supporting, and then working again with business to really move into that reporting side and to understand what would work for them.
I have one more something, that's okay, just on this. So is a mandatory pay transparency scheme somewhere in the future, or do you believe that is completely off the table?
I think right now we've been, I guess the opportunity we had was to develop a business-led approach, which we've done alongside business. Regardless of the regime, I think there has to be that common, or that the approach you're going to take. So that's something that we've developed. So in a way, we're now testing that out in practice. We did quite a lot of stress testing with different businesses before it was launched, obviously. We wanted it to be robust. When we look internationally, there's a real range of approaches to pay gap reporting. Some have gone down the mandatory approach straight away, including Australia. Other countries, including the UK and Switzerland, they did start off in a voluntary space, and then they made some different decisions further down the path. So I guess for us, the ministry, we've prepared this toolkit, this resource, and we're working really hard now to get the uptake. And I guess there will be different decisions at different points in time. But one of the other things we want to do is try and get a real baseline read of how many organisations are reporting their gender pay gaps currently. So we know that in the public service that is happening. Champions for Change, which is 80 also organisations that do cover a significant part of our workforce, they publish theirs. And I think there's around 120 currently being published on the Pay Gaps Insights Hub. But we're wanting to think about how we can get a fuller picture of what that reporting looks like.
Supplementary, Lam.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your opening comments. I've got another supplementary just on the gender pay gap. So, you're probably aware from so much work within the gender pay gap that ethnicity is such a strong determiner and often multiplier of these gaps. But so wondering why the sort of ethnicity lens was left out of the voluntary tool, and what the thinking was around that.
Yeah. Thank you for that question, and you're right. Ethnicity does have a significant overlay with pay gaps, and acknowledging for Pacific women, they have the largest gender pay gap in Aotearoa New Zealand. We started with gender because gender is the factor that does have the biggest driver behind pay gaps. So that's where we've started. The Ministerial Committee, the NACQ, they are interested in ethnic pay gap reporting, and they have signalled to the Minister for Women that they would like that to be part of the 2025 work programme. So I think that the work we've done in developing this gender pay gap toolkit does provide a basis for taking this work forward and potentially capturing different elements in it in the future. So that is something that's happened, and we'll obviously support NACQ also with the work programme. Also,
sorry, what's that acronym?
National
Advisory Council for the Employment of Women.
Oh, thank you.
So it's a ministerial committee chaired by Tracy Haupapa. So yes, they've signalled that they are thinking about that being an integral part of their 2025 work programme, and also with the engagement that we've done in developing this toolkit where it is now, we have also engaged with Wahine Māori and really wanting to work to make sure that this toolkit is picked up by industries and sectors and organisations where they are employed as well. And obviously we will do that for Pacific women, for migrant women. You know, we really want to work with a range of employers who employ a range of women, and really wanting to get this toolkit picked up, used, understood, and really embedded. I'd also just note that we do have really great support from the broader business community, and through a real range of organisations that we've engaged with, they are really, many of them are already doing this work. Just linking back to your question around the ethnic pay gap, acknowledging too that many public service organisations are already reporting the ethnic pay gap, and some businesses, some members of Champions for Change are already doing that. So I think it's really understanding what these organisations are doing, what's working well, but also what the challenges might be. We understand from conversations with business that sometimes it comes down to data. So there are some of the things that we really want to work through and understand so that businesses can do that in the future also.
Your question, Mario Mental.
Yeah, I wanted to do a supplement on the primary if I can, which is so you just used Champions for Change. So I'm thinking about that phrase as well as you said that Australia went ahead, was mandatory and voluntary is now gone to.
They have a mandatory approach.
They do, okay.
Yes.
So how are they going?
They're quite early into their approach. So I think that there's a lot of support being offered, but
Right.
we do keep across what's happening in other jurisdictions, you know, not wanting to reinvent wheels.
Yeah.
And learn what we can. They have an organisation that's set up specifically to with a focus on these sorts of issues.
Because I was just in the mood for, if there's a champion for change, is there a champion for just change? You know, like
Just
let's
do it.
let's just do that. That's all. I was
Yeah.
just in the subspace.
One more sub, I think,
Yeah.
Jan, and then we'll come back to you.
So do you
Yeah.
know that the ethnic pay gap reporting is going to be part of the Ministry of Ethnic Communities going forward, 2025? Ministry for Women doing work around that intersectionality of the ethnic and the women's pay gap together, because I know that, as you've mentioned, is huge, and that has to come with the gender lens over it, surely.
Absolutely, yes, we definitely need to be very connected on that.
So just to the kia ora,
Kia ora.
by the way, just to the kaupapa, manawahine kaupapa kōrero. The proportion of the multi-year appropriation is allocated specifically, so what of that portion is allocated specifically for initiatives directly benefiting Māori women and their whānau?
So, tēnā koe. Look, specifically to your question, I can speak to 1.5 million is going directly to the claimant community for research. So that's been part of a 18-month research program. So that is directly to either the research or support or the assistance around that. But there is other funds around the research support, a committee that's again claimant-led and supported by the ministry. So funds to support them being able to attend hearings, events, hui, wānanga. So in terms of that, we're making available a claimant fund so that the broader mana wahine Māori community can access that in the new year.
I've got a supplement. So how will the ministry ensure that appropriations for the kaupapa inquiry deliver tangible outcomes for Māori women before the final reporting period, which is 27-28, yeah? And then will there be interim public reporting in progress?
Good question. So in terms of there's already existing policies through Te Puni Kōpū, the ministry actively developing support for wahine Māori. So that's also work that's outside the ministry that's actively happening. But in terms of your question around developing policy before the actual report and the hearings, I've mentioned previously, it's really important to make sure we hear the voices of wahine Māori coming through to help develop and inform policy development and initiatives. So we're still at the cusp of that phase. We're coming to the conclusion of our research, and those are remedies, or I guess those are the initiatives that we are looking to as they come to the table and through the tribunal, looking at those.
Thank you. So going forward, your plan to collaborate with iwi and hapu, so you've got the claimant group, ponoana, it's right on. Beyond and outside of that, so engagement, collaboration with iwi, hapu, Māori communities, any work there, Kylie, you can?
Yeah, there is. So it was really important from the outset to have wahine Māori in mind. And so a lot of there were representatives appointed and elected from different iwi, from Whānau right down to Kaitahu. So we are really leaning in on these representatives from each iwi and hapu to be bringing voices back into what we call the Joint Research Committee. But that invitation is open for wahine Māori to speak into there. So engagement is that's just one of the many vehicles that we'll be engaging with wahine Māori.
Okay.
Just supplementary on Mari Mendel's question before, actually, just in terms of the mana wahine inquiry, doesn't report back to 27-28, I think, is that right? Yeah. And so I'm just wondering, in terms of making sure it's on track and the objectives are being met, will there be interim reporting measures before 27-28?
Yes, there will be. We've actually developed some new performance measures that will be included in our annual report. So they're not included in the current one, but from next year onwards, we'll be reporting against those. So I think that it's three, we've got three specific performance measures for the Mana Wahine Kaupapa inquiry that you'll be able to have that kind of picture of. Obviously, we've got our own internal processes to both support the mahi and make sure that, that the Ministry for Women, Manatū Wahine, that we're playing our role in supporting the work, and that Kylie has the support of the organisation behind her and keeping that sort of thing moving. But we've also moving to these formal performance measures as well.
Thank you. Vanessa.
Thank you very much. You mentioned the international work and the report and interviews around CEDAW. So could you give us a bit of an idea of what were some of the key messages or findings from that process? And was there anything that was both a highlight or a work on for New Zealand?
Thank you very much. So we attended in October, it was New Zealand's 9th periodic review under the CEDAW Convention, which is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. I attended with a colleague from Te Puna Awanui, Emma Powell, and from Te Puni Kōkiri, Paula Rawari. We were supported on the ground also by colleagues from the Geneva MFAT office. I think for me, one of the standouts was we were really fortunate in that around 7 colleagues from the non-government sector also made the long trip to Geneva to be part of this. So they had a particular forum where they were able to engage with the committee directly to share their perspectives. And also Dr. Karanina Sumio also attended in her capacity at the time as the Human Rights Commissioner, and again she had the opportunity to speak directly to the committee. One of the standouts for me was just the way in which I think from the committee's perspective, they could really see the way in which we were all working together for the same objectives, which is, for Aotearoa New Zealand to be a great place for all women and girls and to deliver really great outcomes. So that really stood out for me. Also, that we were able to, tell our story in terms of our progress for gender equality, and a whole lot of levels, including representation, employment, family violence and sexual violence, women's participation in, FIFA World Cups and Olympics, so that full picture. But of course, while we were recognised by the committee for the great progress that's been made, there's always more to do. They were very explicit that they hold a higher bar for New Zealand, and they said that at the outset. But at the same time, they were really impressed with a number of things that we've done over that period. And I think that our commitment to continue to further the work. There were some areas where they've asked for a report back in a couple of years' time, and one of those areas was around stalking. So we will be reporting back to them on the things that they've asked for. And in due course, we'll also be not just publishing their concluding observations, but setting out, the next steps for this work as well. So yeah, it's a really important forum, and one in which, you do get challenged by subject matter experts, but where you're able to really take that perspective away and reflect it across government and the work that we're doing for women and girls.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a further question on that. So is your role in Aotearoa New Zealand's role in those forums, is it about sharing what's going on in a domestic space rather than sort of a collective of how we address sort of what else is going on internationally for women?
Yeah.
Can you help me understand?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's so we, when I say we, New Zealand government reported to the committee in July last year, and that it's quite the committee is very clear on what it wants responded to. So it sets out a number of questions from across all of government, and we then coordinated the response back to them. So it's really, if you like, a snapshot over they looked at it in a 4-year time period of what has the improvement or what has changed over that time. And we are then, when we're there in person, we're also able to update them on sort of what's happened in the subsequent period as well. One of the members of the committee is from Australia, so she played a key role in kind of if you like, pulling the concluding observations together. She wasn't the chair, but the rapporteur. And she, you know, has a pretty good handle on the domestic context here, but it's very much focused on New Zealand. The week that we were in front of the committee, they also had delegations from Saudi Arabia and Laos. So countries will invited to appear before the committee at a particular point in time, and it is sort of referred to as an examination. So they're really, you know, wanting to get an insight into the progress that's been made.
As a supplementary on that, I was in an event on the weekend which had a sobering reminder that 1/3 of New Zealand women have experienced physical, sexual, or coercive violence from an intimate partner in their lifetimes. I was wondering what work can be done across government to address that.
Yeah. So I attended an event last week which was hosted by Good Shepherd here in Parliament, and that was to acknowledge or to mark International Economic Abuse Awareness Day. So Good Shepherd helps people who find themselves experiencing economic harm or abuse, and really helps them out of quite difficult situations. But yeah, it is part of family violence, but one that can at times, I think, for some victims seem a little bit more or less visible. But yes, those statistics are really sobering. What we do at the Ministry for Women is we support the work of Te Puna Awanui, which is an agency that's working across government to really address family violence and sexual violence. So we have a key role in that. We also we've got some work underway at the moment, which I actually mentioned in the opening statement, but really work that we're wanting to do to support women who are in leadership roles or who aspire to leadership, but maybe have concerns about what that means in terms of the online world and how that might impact on them or their whānau. So that's something that we're working collaboratively with NetSafe on, and thinking to next year when the local government elections are on, you know, that we continue to grow that pipeline of leaders. And we've also, we're currently consulting publicly on the topic of our long-term insights briefing, which again is focused on aspects of online safety for women. So that's sort of a contribution that we think as a ministry we can make to that broader picture. But obviously at this point in time, we're wanting to hear back from members of the public about that topic and whether they think that it would make a meaningful difference.
And if I could add a supplementary to that, one other statistic I heard, which I hadn't heard before, is that businesses started by women have a 30% higher success rate than those started by others. I'm just wondering, is there any work that the ministry can do to sort of help surface that, empower that?
Definitely. I think that's something that there's, I heard those statistics too recently, and I think it was also maybe framed around women's access to startup capital and some of the barriers they face with that. So I think as we're focusing on women's economic empowerment, which is one of our strategic priority areas, definitely it's something that we want to be part of and to explore about what we can contribute as a ministry to really create those opportunities for women entrepreneurs and business leaders to expand or develop and grow.
Supplementary, Chair?
No.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Was it
It's new.
a new?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, just before we go to, could I just do one more supplementary just on the capital, access to capital? I heard the same thing. I'm just wondering, like, do you have any thoughts, observations about, and are there other agencies or, you know, government or non-government that you can or are working with to sort of lift that capability, that access to capital?
I think definitely that's something that we want to pick up and work alongside others. I think it was Dame Teresa Gatting who's involved in that work around really putting a spotlight on that. The event that I mentioned that was held in Parliament last week was really interesting because it brought in some of the people that were involved in that were from financial service providers in terms of thinking about economic harm and the role that they can play. So I think it's often when you bring people together, when you can put these different perspectives out there, share that research and really start to think about, well, what does this mean for us? Your statistic around the success rate, with women in leadership roles, and what can we do to unlock the opportunities there? So it's not currently, I guess, an active piece of work, but absolutely, I think many ears kind of picked up when we heard that and really wanting to explore that. And we also know from some research that, or data that Te Puni Kōkiri have, that businesses owned by wahine Māori are more likely to employ women than businesses owned by others. So I think, again, part of that picture of how we're supporting women for their financial future, for themselves, for their whānau, really conscious that men, their KiwiSaver balances on average are 25% more than women when they reach retirement. So I think all of these pieces, gender pay gap work, thinking about the wahine Māori economy, thinking about investment capital and where that goes. It's all part of that picture of empowering women economically. So yeah, we'll definitely pick that up and run with it.
Awesome. Marinwino.
Yeah, just measures that you're taking to mitigate the risk of revenue shortfall.
Yeah.
Can you just talk, and then to that maybe, because of that reduction, has it impacted on any program specifically designed for Māori women?
Great, thank you. So we have had a change to our budget, and because of the growth that we'd had in previous years, our savings target was 7.5%. We've met that through a mix of undertakings, which did include not reappointing to 5 roles that were vacant. It hasn't had a direct impact on any programs or work that we're doing for wahine Māori. How we're mitigating it in part is we've had this work underway for a while, but we like to think of ourselves as small and mighty. Because we've got a lot of ambition. We know that ministers have ambition, women in the community has ambition, businesses have ambition for us as well. So our job is to really rise and to meet that challenge. And my leadership team and I, we think a key part of that is how we work as a team, both within the organisation and outside of it. Within the organisation, a real focus has been on working differently. And as the area that Anna leads, we've pulled together a couple of our real key levers, which is policy and advice, also engagement and communications, and really bringing, as an organisation, more of an end-to-end approach to what we do. We're also wanting to empower and develop our people by opening up opportunities for different work streams so that, you don't get too pigeonholed. In small organisations, you have to be really agile and adaptive, and that's what we need to be successful. So we're running what we call a matrix approach to a lot of our key work, where we're drawing on different people to make different contributions. We're also really cognizant that there are many organisations and groups out there that are equally, if not more, committed to getting great results for women and girls. So how we partner and work alongside them is really important as well. And I believe, and my team believes, that that's how we're going to be really effective and really amplifying the voices of women and girls, amplifying our work and delivering products that businesses will take up and use and really be proponents for change. And I think for me personally, the work that we've done as an organisation and with others in developing the Gender Pay Gap Toolkit exemplifies how as an organisation we want to lead and how we want to deliver, and really how we want to have an impact on the community.
Jane, any question?
Thank you. I wanted to move to pay equity settlements, and you've in your annual report talk about the 15 that have been, and the one extension that have been completed so far. It's still reasonably new process though, when you look at the time frame that those 15 have happened over, and the expertise is still being developed within the sector. So what difference to that do you think disbanding the pay equity task force is going to make?
So the pay equity task force, when it was in place, sat within the Public Service Commission, and we did support that work. They were set up with time-limited funding. So, you know, I guess in a way they had been preparing for the model when that point in time got met. I think that there is a level of, I take your point that, you know, still relatively new into this process. 15 or so have worked through the system. It's given time for different tools and expertise to be developed across the system. I think that that's been retained in organisations, but they will be progressed in a different way going forward.
But you're still going to keep an oversight of what you've kind of said that there.
Yeah,
in your work
yeah,
with them.
absolutely. So we've kind of got an oversight in terms of, you know, keeping up to date with how many settlements there are, how many are active. I understand at the moment there's 26 active claims, so sort of being across that, and also understanding how many people are included in those settlements as well. And
Can I just double check something there,
Yeah.
just as you were talking? So out of those 15, some of those have been concentrated, like education's had probably more than its fair share, which is a good thing. But does that mean that we're at risk of some of the agencies who are now having to lead this work not having that expertise at all within their agencies?
I think my experience has been that kind of as a practitioner, that one of the things that does work really well is where you kind of build this network of expertise across government. So be it in a whole mix of different roles. So I guess what I think is happening here is that there's quite a network of practice of practitioners in these areas where they will be able to support each other, you know, share what's happening, share insights with a view to supporting these processes.
Kind of what the task force did though, eh?
Yeah, but this being sort of more sitting with the agencies, or at more of an agency lead, but kind of being able to form together a bit of a community of practice.
And I just say that I look forward to having this conversation next year, because I am sceptical. So I look forward to actually having the conversation when we see how much of a difference this has made.
Yeah, but we will keep across this so that we'll be prepared for that conversation too.
Thank you. Wanting to just return to the international context, and particularly I'm interested in sort of Ministry for Women's role in actually working for MFAT in the international space. A number of us were at a sort of cross-party collaborative meeting about recognising gender apartheid, particularly with what's going on in Iran and Afghanistan as sort of these areas where, you know, the oppression and violence towards women is extremely heightened. How does Ministry for Women work with MFAT? Because one thing that we noted at that hui was that the plight of women and girls is actually a focus for the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And how is your work actually informing that, or is that all just within MFAT? Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, so we've got a really close working relationship with MFAT. So, you know, we do have these international obligations or international forums where the Ministry for Women does take the lead on, but obviously we're doing that on behalf of the government, and also need to work really closely with our MFAT colleagues in doing that. So we have members of our team, colleagues who are really experienced in the international space. One in particular has formerly worked at MFAT, so quite deep and connected relationships, which is always really helpful. So we definitely, you know, work it as a team. We're not sort of being sole operators or anything like that. We're also really connected and not, so the work focused on the rights of women and girls around the world. We're also connected in with MFAT and the work they're doing in free trade agreements. And you would have seen that gender is being included in a number of free trade agreements, including the one with the UK and the EU that were finalised in the last year or so, but is continuing to be a focus for other agreements as they're negotiated. So I'd say it's a very close working relationship that we have with them.
Thank you. Just up on that. So are you saying like the close working relationship is great? Are you saying though that that influences us on an international, like New Zealand's voice on an international space? For example, recognising the codification of gender apartheid as a crime, which recently went to the UN. Is that where you work to sort of put forward New Zealand's view, or are you talking about just in a domestic space where we kind of report internationally?
It's both.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
both. You know, the international forums that we attend, for example, the Commission on the Status of Women, it's an annual UN forum. I believe it's the second biggest forum on their calendar, and I think last year there were more than 10,000 attendees there. So that does create an opportunity for the Minister for Women to really put forward New Zealand's voice on a range of international issues. And in my time in this role, we have spoken out strongly, not just in that forum, but other forums as well, including APEC, the Women in the Economy Forum, about you know, different geopolitical events that have happened that have impacted, you know, had really adverse impacts on women and girls.
Supplementary on that, you mentioned earlier that more is expected of New Zealand than say some other countries. Just how does that then flow back to New Zealand's well, how New Zealand is perceived internationally?
Yeah, we've definitely looked at as a leader for gender equality in a global perspective. When I had the opportunity to make some opening statements when I appeared before CEDAW, and included that in 2023, when we reached gender balanced parliament, and we were only the 6th country in the world to have ever achieved that. So that's just one illustration. And also in recent history, we've had a woman Prime Minister for quite a significant portion. I won't give the stats because I think I might get those wrong. But, you know, we've had women as the Prime Minister for quite a significant period of our recent history. Not all countries have had that experience. You know, a number of countries have never had a woman Prime Minister or President. So yeah, we definitely looked at as leaders. This year marked the 131st anniversary of suffrage. When I meet with colleagues globally, they're all very aware of our legacy, and they do look to us to see what we are doing. As we look to them, I think there's always the opportunity to learn from others, even others who on the surface are in a different position. You'll generally find elements of really good practice, or things that at least cause you to pause and reflect, so that we can be outwards looking and not just inwards looking.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just make the comment that we've had women prime ministers across both national-led and Labour-led governments.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
That's what she's
Yeah.
getting at.
yeah, no, I was
I was
just
just trying to remember the stats, and unfortunately I can't quite, but I sort of almost want to say 17 out of the last 26, but I might have that wrong, so don't quote me.
It's quite a stat.
Yeah.
Janet, your question?
It's actually a little bit of a segue, but it's because we have been built on a feminist backbone as a country, and always something that I talk about is the fact that we've had that strong feminist history within our country. But one area that I think that we have quite a bit of work to do is in the area of women's health. And I know that's not your direct responsibility, but you are the policy to to talk about gender. And I know that on Menopause Day or around Menopause Day, you held a webinar that was very successful, and there were quite a few that week that people came to. And I think this is one area that we're really on a back foot around at the moment, and 50% of the population do go and experience this, and it probably impacts on the other 50%. So my question is, what came from that webinar, and what is the work that you're taking forward from that to advise Ministry of Health? But I don't just think it's a health, should lie just in health. So I've sort of got a big question. Probably you can see why I want to ask that question.
So you're right. We had around 250 registrations for that webinar, which was on menopause, and it included Sarah Connor, who's been working in this space for some time now. We've kind of thinking about how we can broaden out our webinar series, which to date has had quite a strong focus on women in leadership, women in governance, but we do want to play that role where we can provide women with information, that's really important for their lives and where they're at and what they're wanting to achieve and go on. And it actually does have quite a strong link to women in leadership in terms of, like you say, different stages in life. We are continuing to work really closely with the Ministry of Health. We have also kind of initiated contact with or connections with Pharmac, really wanting to play a role in supporting their work. And when they did the engagement on the gel HRT medication, we were able to work alongside them to just tap into our communities and groups. We were able to share their discussion documents on our social media channels and so on and so forth. And we want to do more of that. Health is one of our 4 strategic pillars, and it's going to be an area that as a ministry we do continue to develop, acknowledging that we're not the lead ministry here, we don't have the big levers, but from a women's health perspective we want to bring those voices through, and we want to assist our colleagues to with the work that they're leading out on.
So your counterparts in places like UK, Canada, Australia are heavily involved in this. Have you had those discussions? Because I know you discuss with your colleagues in those jurisdictions. So have you had those discussions around what they're doing to influence the strategies in their country? Because they are so far ahead of us.
It's not, to be honest, it's not a focus area I've had to date. I think till this point I've been quite focused on more gender pay gaps, online safety, which I do know from speaking to counterparts overseas in the online space is a real issue. No one sort of, from the conversations I've had, the people aren't sort of progressing that, but we're wanting to take that forward now. But I do have the opportunity in the year ahead to start those conversations. We definitely want to learn from others to understand what's working well in other jurisdictions and really to take those learnings and bring them back. So I will definitely be doing that in the opportunities that I have next year.
Oh, thank you very much. That's all we have time for. Thank you for coming in and speaking to the committee this afternoon. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time.
I will now move into private session.
Thank you.